So, there we go. I am here in the birthplace of George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver. George Washington Carver. I am here at the birthplace of George Washington Carver. I'm here at the birthplace of George Washington Carver. This is now the George Washington Carver National Monument. Hope this place is still open. Hello. Would it be okay if I made a quick YouTube video? Do a walking tour?
It's at 5 o'clock, so we
Have about an hour?
A little less than an hour.
A little less than an hour. All right. So let's see if I could read all of this really fast. As a baby, George did not escape the violent times. Sometimes during the war, he and his mother were kidnapped by slave raiders. Moses Carter sent John Bentley right after the thieves, but only George was recovered. Bentley received a horse in payment. During the Civil War in Missouri, disintegration of law and order engulfed area residents as evidenced by robbery, arson, torture, murder, bloody raids, and violent retribution for old grudges between neighbors. This is a Remington percussion revolver model 1861 caliber 44. While living in Fort Scott, Kansas in 1879, Carver witnessed a brutal lynching of an African American man by a mob. They lynched a colored man, drugged him by our horse, and dashed his brains out onto the sidewalk. As young as I was, the horror haunted me and does even now. George Washington Carver. They have a couple of black and white sketches of that incident. Tension escalated during the Civil War in Missouri as an unpopular occupying force of Union soldiers and militia attempted to enforce martial law in areas dominated by guerrilla bands and outlaws. During the Civil War, 1861 through 1865, numerous bloody encounters took place in western Missouri, northern Arkansas, and eastern Kansas. They got a little map of Missouri, Arkansas, Kansas, Indian Territory, the turbulent era. George Washington Carver was born during the Civil War into the turbulent environment of southwest Missouri. After the Civil War, local violence continued unabated. The return of Union and Confederate veterans compounded the poisonous atmosphere of mistrust and revenge. Large numbers of African Americans left the area to escape the danger symbolized in the increasing number of local lynchings. Many fled to Kansas to join African Americans who had come from the deep South in search of safety and opportunity. Carver moved to Fort Scott, Kansas in the 1870s to attend school. And a little bit more about, as a baby, George did not escape the violent times. So this first exhibit is talking about how George Washington Carver was kidnapped with his mother. They were grabbed by raiders, night riders. They had kidnapped George Washington Carver, one of his sisters, and his mother. Moses Carver was actually George Washington Carver's owner. George Washington Carver was born into slavery. He was owned by Moses Carver. That's how he had the name Carver. And he used to refer to himself as Carver's George. That's how he referred to himself when he was a young kid. Now here in Missouri was a special state, right? You guys weren't slavery all throughout. Your northern half was probably pro-Union, and your southern half was probably more Confederate. Is that how it went, or is that kind of
I
the
don't
gist?
know the exact division, but yes, it was divided between, slavery and free. I don't know, so most likely, yes, it'd probably be the northern part, because this southern part where we're at did sympathize with slavery, with the slave states.
Right.
So our state was a border state.
Yeah, I figured because if George Washington Carver was born here, that means this was not exactly a plantation, which we have a lot of in Texas, but he probably was. It says he was a German, this guy Moses, and I think he was an immigrant. He was actually born in Germany. Do you know if that's
I don't know exactly for sure. I know Moses came from Illinois.
okay?
I don't know where his family prior to that came from. I do know he has German. Moses was German, had German influence in his life.
I'll look more into that, but this is the most amazing monument I've been to. I guess I haven't been to a lot.
Well, if you ever get a chance to go to Alabama, watch at the Tuskegee, because also pretty much it.
And I believe that's where Mr. Carver died as well. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So he was probably like the biggest celebrity from this area, huh?
Yeah, I mean, Truman in Independence is also well known.
So Harry S. Truman is from the same town?
Harry Truman, yes, from Missouri. He's from Independence, Missouri.
Okay.
In this area, it's a toss-up between Fort Benton. Well, I mean, Carver, for Diamond is best George Washington Carver for Diamond, and then Fort Benton, who was an artist, was from Neosho.
Leosho?
Yeah.
And is Eisenhower the one that commissioned this as a national monument? Or was that a different president?
Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Okay.
Yeah, it was under Franklin Delano Roosevelt that was passed as a national monument.
FDR. Yeah, we have, like I say, where I live in Texas, we got a lot of stuff dedicated to old George Washington Carver. A lot of people consider him the greatest scientist in America at the time. He was probably the most popular scientist at the time. And this billboard or display says George Washington Carver, scientist, educator, humanitarian. Occasionally, there moves across the stage of time a historic figure, a creative teacher, a profound thinker, a humble servant, or an inspiring teacher. George Washington Carver was all of these. The memorial we can create only indicates to the world that once there was a man named George Washington Carver whose life was a source of inspiration to all men, a pillar of hope to his race, a fountain of service to his fellows, a tower of devotion to his God, and that this man achieved a worthy and enduring stature in the memories of men. This is an excerpt from the 1843 congressional hearings that established the monument. Now, again, he was very popular at his time. He was basically like a scientist. He was considered one of the greatest, if not the greatest, and a lot of people, including myself, think he's the greatest agricultural scientist that the world has ever seen. He came up with all kind of things, and he figured out a lot of things about using soil. The American agricultural community really owes him a lot, and they really do appreciate him down where I live for obvious reasons. But he really helped agriculture. He figured out different things about soils. He did different types of experiments. He made his laboratory basically out of trash, according to legend. And he was basically like, you can almost say like the first conservatory. He was like the first environmentalist, you can almost say. But he was also a Christian.